Hello, I'm Veronica Stark, and welcome to my BlogCast, where I'll be covering topics relating to holistic vocal coaching and personal stories relating to singing and performance in general. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram by searching @SoulSingerCoach, and don't forget to check out my online course, Sing with Soul in 7 Weeks, on my website, soulsingercoach.com. This is episode 3, Jealousy Happens. Yes, I know. I'm late. I committed to doing these podcasts every 2 weeks, but the usually difficult month of December turned out to be more challenging than usual. So I needed to concentrate on my own self-care. And now I'm springing into the spring and feeling clear, lighter, and encouraged by all the COVID restrictions being lifted in Vancouver. And as if to reward us for bearing the dark winter, the cherry blossoms are serving us their bountiful glory. I'm surrounded in beauty, mild weather for Canada, and a stunning view of the North Shore Mountains, and a peaceful neighborhood. So much to be grateful for, and, well, I can imagine that could make colder provinces a little jealous, a little envious. Well, jealousy happens. Whether we are the perpetrators or the receivers, the emotions of jealousy and envy have a deep impact on our voices and our expression. And this is what we're going to explore in this podcast. Jealousy happens. First, let's make the distinction between jealousy and envy. They are not that dissimilar. Merriam-Webster's website explains that envy means discontented longing for someone else's advantages. Jealousy means unpleasant suspicion or apprehension of rivalship. Envy is most often used to refer to a covetous feeling toward another person's attributes, possessions, or stature in life. Many people use the word jealous to mean the same thing. The article goes on to say, there are indeed some semantic distinctions that may be made between these words, but it should also be noted that many educated people use them interchangeably. Clear as mud? Yeah, mud indeed. Let me tell you a dirty story about one of my most potent experiences with jealousy. And just for some background on the story, let me set the scene a bit. When I was 11 years old, I recall being so miserable living in my grandmother's foster home. So when my mother married and had a house on the next street, I asked to move in with her and her new husband. Much to my surprise, I got what I wanted, and I was adopted soon into my new family, where my youngest brother already lived since he was a baby. It was an awkward adjustment on many levels, but I didn't know anything different. I felt pretty lucky to have my own room instead of sharing a chaotic house with 15 people. When I was about, 12 years old, my mother would take me out visiting and introduce me to new friends with the words, "We're more like friends, not mother and daughter." Well, you can derive whatever you like from that. I began to have a vague idea that I was a threat to her somehow, but I couldn't fathom why, so I took it as a comment on my quote, maturity, unquote. One Sunday afternoon, some people came over from the local bar for a kitchen table party, and the center of this was a local singer named Tom, who also played guitar. Tom was a really good singer, and I remember him noticing me, hearing me sing along, encouraging me. So I did. I could tell he liked my voice, like they did at school. He was smiling at me as I sang along with others, and he wanted me to try a song by myself, so I did. As I was singing, I turned to look at my mother, and the look in her eyes was something I'll never forget. It felt like pure hatred. Her eyes were so narrow. It was as if she was trying to laser beam obliteration into my soul with this death stare. I was too young to understand what was happening, and, well, it completely broke my heart. I was too young to know that this wasn't about me, and like all other children in these situations, I internalized it. Even though I eventually worked through my fear of seeing this face, whenever I see this face in others, it still hurts very deeply. It's only in recent years that I realized that this was one of the many events that conditioned me to diminish my using my own voice. This moment produced such a deep shame in my singing in front of certain family members who I just did not feel safe with. It was so confusing for me at the time. It's difficult to defend yourself when you've never had the foundation of encouragement or anyone telling you that you've done something good. Young minds become conditioned to criticism and will do anything to avoid being a disappointment to those who are supposed to love them the most. And to admit that someone is jealous or envious of you makes you look like some kind of narcissistic ego monster. So, with these choices, what do? Well, you believe their judgment is the right one. You believe your voice has the power to hurt others, and their needs are more important because you are young. You have no job. You have to go to school. You cannot pay rent, and you need food. You need survival. If your family doesn't like your voice or withholds praise or positive feedback, you can come to believe they are the benchmark for the judgment of your talent. Even though you have flashes of confidence from the admirations of strangers or friends, it still has a deep effect on you. If you've ever seen the movie Rocket Man, just note that even though millions and millions of people loved Elton John, only the rejection of one man, his father, could break his heart for not accepting him as he was and send him spiraling into addiction. The truth was that my mother was too emotionally damaged and immature to handle seeing her daughter in the spotlight. And it took me decades to understand that I wasn't a bad person for hurting my mother. It took me decades to realize that the responsibility at that young age was not mine at all. I coped by living a double life where the outside world saw me differently to how those at home did. Thankfully, I had an awareness that my outside world experience was the reality, and that my home life was, again, something to endure. What I didn't know was how deep this wound had set. I just learned how to hide my talent from my parents and to sing whenever they left the house. There was no way I could hurt my mother like that again. There was no way I could ever show these people who I really was. So this is an extreme version on how damaging envy can be and how this emotion can twist the minds of others. And when emotions are twisted, we have to work to understand the reality. And the reality is this: we often do not know why another person has what they have. We don't know the criteria that is out of their control. We don't know their privilege, and we don't know their disadvantages. Criteria such as lung capacity, body shape, genes, motivation, inspirations, sufferings, hard work. By focusing on what others have, we are already comparing to ourselves to be less than the other person by putting them first, as if we are comparing bad Exhibit A to good Exhibit A, when in reality, you're comparing a pumpkin to an apple and judging on the pumpkin's merits. These are two different seeds planted in two different fields, and so it stands to reason that the fruit is going to be different. By comparing ourselves to others, we are diminishing what we have and forgetting what we have whenever we are thinking of another person's light that makes our light smaller or even non-existent. Two things can be true and good at the same time. This is called reconciliation, and it takes work to build this reality into your body and mind's understanding. Now, to experience someone's jealous of you, that can trigger a super cringe fest for me, but I'm getting better. I'm always getting better. Because I began to understand that jealousy and envy is a betrayal of the covenant we are supposed to have with our family and our friends, that they are supposed to be on your side. They are supposed to want good things for you. And as we grow up, we start to understand that what is supposed to be isn't always what is to be. Yet the soul still needs what it needs. We all want love. We all want acceptance. We all have different gifts to offer, and different gifts present different outcomes. There are different audiences for the different gifts that we all have. We will never know the sacrifices and personal challenges that other singers go through. All we see is the result. All we see is performance. This is really important for singers to know because as artists, we are driven to refine our gifts in the hopes that they are broadly accepted by mastery of our skill. Despite narrowed eyes of hate, despite the pleasure of one guitar man who liked my voice, despite the apathy of others there, I still had to find my way to finish that song as this was all going through my mind. I had to learn to focus on the moment and stay with the light of the one person there who wanted me to sing. As an aside, I highly recommend the movie Little Voice, starring the amazing Jane Horrocks. Jane's character was in a world that didn't see her value, but she tuned into the memory of her father, loving her music, and he was the guiding light for all of the magic that came out of her. So now we know how damaging our envy can be to others. Let's talk about the envy we feel. I'm no angel, and yes, I also experience flashes of envy that truly shock me in my weaker moments. I have that convenient amnesia that we all have where we forget who we truly are, and our ego is triggered by this perceived threat that someone will take away our brilliance with their own brilliance. We always forget that the ego is a liar, a deceiver, and a justifier for all we dislike in ourselves. We have to be vigilant in facing our own darkness and remember that child that was shut down by another, that the innocence that was in us also exists in others. Every flash of envy can be an opportunity. Yes, it's an opportunity to find out exactly what we desire. We need to look at those we envy right in the face, listen closely to them, and find out what we covet. We need to learn two things. One, what do we want from them? And two, how can I attain what I want? If you want to explore this further, I encourage you to check out my course, Sing with Soul in 7 Weeks, where we go really deep into these concepts. We can always shape the vocal qualities we want into our own bodies. We can distill the essence of what our mentors teach us and apply this to our own unique gifts. As an example, you may envy how Christina Aguilera riffs, but let's analyze that. Is this something that you really want, and does this suit your personal style? Is it the acrobatic 100 notes per phrase? Is it the control? Is it the power? Is it the fame that this talent offers her? It's really important to break this down, to write it out, to explore those raw feelings without editing. Anyone who ever was envious of me has absolutely no idea how I suffered to be able to use my voice in this way. They have no idea how difficult it is for me to get through a day sometimes just because of childhood PTSD. All they see and hear is the result of a lot of hard work. It's so hard because it sends me down a well-worn path of memory. And eventually, when I come to my right mind, I remember that most people really don't know any better. And most importantly, I remember that my human experience is one most likely shared by other humans. As a singer, you can choose to see the truth that those you envy are not your enemies. They are a gift. We can lift ourselves out of the shadow of envy and use the glaring, uncomfortable light to expose us to what we really desire. And if we're smart, we'll commit to exploring these teachable moments, to really examine our desires and admit that we have deeply embedded roots to tend to prune, to weed out, to commit to the work we need to do to make our dreams come true. You can sing with soul when you embrace all of who you are, and especially embrace the gifts that other singers can offer you. You don't need to protect your ego or pretend that you'll never get jealous of others. You can observe that and reflect because now you know this function has a purpose. You can hold two truths at the same time. You can sing and teach, and you can open your heart to listen and learn. You've been listening to Veronica Start's BlogCast. Please subscribe, click the bell for updates, and if you're so inclined, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic in the comments, or you can send an email to veronica@soulsingercoach.com. Remember, life is hard. Sing anyway.